Hi everybody, Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got Wendy Muirhead. And Wendy and I are going to be talking about the time it takes to buy things and how we can actually reduce the time or even slash the time that it takes to actually procure things. Wendy, welcome. Before we get into it, where can people find you?
Tim, thank you for having me on, and lovely to see you as always. People can find me either on LinkedIn or Wendy at wh-people.com.
So welcome, Wendy. It's great to get to talk to you. You're a new CEO, relatively new CEO in terms of setting up your own company. But in the past, you've bought things, haven't you? So what is it that about buying and procuring things that takes such a long time?
Well, I mean, if you're looking at business technology and we're looking particularly around people investment technology, it's actually why we set the business up. So should I share a wee bit about me and
Yeah,
the work
yes,
we're doing,
absolutely.
and then I can sort of share a little bit of context of that experience. I've been in industry and I've helped grow businesses since the noughties. And I spent the majority of my career, Tim, in global payroll, HR transformation, and about sort of 18 months ago came to a point where I was looking to have actually a bit more balance in my life, with having a bit more time at home. But actually, I really genuinely care about the payroll industry. And I've got so much experience both on the supplier side, but also running businesses that, I understand what it's been like when you've got a budget, you've had to go and get the approval of the budget from the CEO. You go through a project, you have the governance of the project, you need to prove that it's working and it's an investment that's been worth having, and you need to keep the confidence levels of the CEO. And so having that depth of experience, myself and my co-founding partner, Helen Seal, who is fabulous. Helen also has spent decades in HR and had the similar experiences. How do you take your business case through? How do you mandate that throughout the business? How do you manage the change through organizations to demonstrate the value of the new technology investment? And so together, we founded with our other partner, Paul Karnowski, we founded WH People, which is a global payroll and HCM consultancy business. And you rightly say, we have just coming up for our first birthday at the end of March. So we are new, but we are focusing our time on actually helping organizations to do exactly what this discussion's about today. How do you actually get the maximum value and slash through that time to review the market? Because a lot of the time it can take months, if not years, to start to pull the data points together to satisfy the requirements of what the board are looking for information on. And so we see our role as taking our depth of expertise and driving that decision making in a much more accelerated time frame. And the only way you really can do that, Tim, is by really understanding the market. Because when you sorry,
I was going to say, and when we're talking about accelerating, what are we talking about?
essentially our aim is to take our clients when they recognize they've got a problem, from we have a problem through to signing a piece of paper that's going to save them money, offer better operational experience for their people, and often a better employee experience for their people within board meeting to board meeting. That's our aim when we support our clients.
Because I've worked on the sales side of procurements, and they can literally take years.
Yeah, they can.
Because
So
because
I know that.
because of you have to go through that process of looking at the suppliers. You have to, I mean, if you take public sector, where you have to go out to the European Journal or something because you have to give everybody a chance.
Yeah.
And then there's this, responding to various documents, and while those documents can be actually ways of making sure that certain people don't get through, it's it just takes such a long time, doesn't it? So what have you been able to do to actually shorten that?
So the way we address that is we started off looking at the global payroll market, and actually it's a really clustered market. There's been a lot of new vendors that have came into the market, whether they've expanded their offerings or whether, they've new market entries and are looking to expand from one region to a more international presence. And we've essentially cataloged the market. So instead of going through that RFP or RFI situation, we've actually collected a lot of these data points so that we can very, very quickly, when we have a client, we had a client last year who was looking for support in North America. They were looking for HR services, treasury, gross to net, and tax advice. And there's a number of global payroll providers out there that won't touch the tax advice side of it. And so it's actually just really understanding the differences and what's the real USPs with each of the organizations, but digging into the detail. So, like, really understanding their SOWs, understanding their market difference. And we are cataloging that so that when we're working with organizations, we can really clearly identify from that discovery, what's the service requirement that they're looking for, because there's various different models that's out there in the market. What is it that they're using today? Why is it not working? What is it that you need for the future? Where is the CEO taking the business? If you're an acquisitional business, you want to make sure that you've got levels of flexibility in there. And the last thing you ever want to do is sign up with a provider that can't service you as you continue to grow. And so those are the areas around having sort of almost commercial and contractual flexibility that we can give guidance on as we're supporting organizations as they go through that process. But essentially, once we've really understood that sort of initial understanding of where the clients are looking to go, we can then help them to formulate a short list, help them with all the correct data points, and actually help them through the evaluation process if they want our help. Equally, we can make the introductions and they can run through it themselves. It's up to clients how they want to process it. But again, our aim is to help that buy-in from the executive, because if the executives aren't engaged in a program, it's really hard to get on the board agenda. It's hard to ask for the investment. It's hard to ask for the additional resources unless typically something goes wrong. It's amazing how many in the years and years I've done it. You walk in a room and you say, oh, was the CEO or the C-suite not paid properly? And it starts as like right at the top of the board priority. Let's look at, what our service provider looks like. So that's where we can come in and really help them to navigate, but also make sure that they have that commercial understanding and empowerment so that they've got that level of flexibility as and when they change.
Because I think quite often with with procurement, it's about audit, isn't it? It's about showing that when a decision is made, that you can go back and prove why that decision was made. Because if you've got a short list of 5, you're going to have to tell 4 people they haven't won the business.
Tim, you'd be amazed. I've worked with organizations where they've went out to 20.
Oh, I'm sure I've seen that as well.
Yeah, and I know that we've had similar previous career backgrounds, and I don't think that's fundamentally changed. There's still a lot of organizations that want to go out there, but I've done it when I've went through evaluation processes. If you don't document it and really clarify that you've understood, it's so easy to get mixed up when you're going through those processes, especially when the market says that they pay well first time every time. And when you start looking at they pay well first time every time, the SLAs are, we've got 99 point blah accuracy. There's very little differences until you really start to get under the onion. And that's if you don't go to market very often, and the market is changing and it's evolving, and if you're not immersed in it, it's really quite challenging to find that point of difference out. And that's the other area is, so there's that misinterpretation around when, people are understanding, even from an RFP process. And there's some that'll go out there and that will document a full detailed RFP process. But the interpretation from the CEO to the executive sponsor in the C-suite to the team that are driving it to the multiple 20 vendors that have taken it and interpreted it, it can often be quite different. And an RFP is never added in your contract. So if you really want commercial confidence, then it's really making sure that you've got the contractual elements aligned to understanding rather than the RFP evaluation. So that misinterpretation is something that myself and the WHP team can help with. But essentially, what we're trying to do is not only help with that evaluation, but we're really looking to empower the teams that are going through it as well. Because you can go through an evaluation, you can buy something, but if you can't get it up and running and live, then it can cause a lot of pain and damage, especially when it comes to payroll, because everyone wants to get paid.
Yeah.
So the risk there on any kind of payroll program, you want to make sure that you have the right people that are empowered to make the decisions, if you've got the right controls and frameworks, and what's that change management strategy look like, and how, even before you even start thinking about the market, you can start doing a lot of that readiness work and get your internal data, your internal audit, because you're absolutely right. A lot of the documentation about why people make decisions isn't actually documented in businesses. They'll have stage gates and they'll have, papers, but they don't actually necessarily talk around why they made the decisions about going down one path over another. And so that's an area that we're trying to encourage more organizations to have richer sources of information there for internal audit. So then if turnover is high in a company, you can go back and you can understand why those decisions, who were they made by, why were they made, and who were the team involved in the discussion. But it is a case that the number of organizations today don't have a lot of that even documented internally. So a lot of the work that we're doing currently is actually just helping organizations to get ready before they even think about the market just now.
One of the things that interested me when we did the preparation and to talk about this was the fact that you actually have a conversation about why would you actually want to change a system, because it's so impactful in terms of the people, the process, and the technology, that actually you might be able to use the system you have right now.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the evaluations that we've been through in the last year and the conversations that we've had with our clients have been very much around, actually they're seeing that they've got a problem and they may have a bit of a breakdown in the relationship with the supplier or the service provider that they're working with. But actually, a lot of it's that they're not really using the full breadth of value that they could get out of the technology. In fact, it's kind of interesting because about a third of our business that we've done in the last year has actually been working with organizations to actually get more and enable them more into actually using it better. And it could be a simple report change or a config change that changes what that experience is like for the internal teams. And when they start to actually grasp it, and they're you can just see how they're getting much more value much more quickly out of the tech. That for us is a bit of a joy, because our aim is to get in, support clients, help them empower themselves and their own people so they have a better experience with the technology and to help them to grow. We always say it's all about people, because if you invest in them and they own it, then they're in control of the trajectory for the clients that we support. And
so what are the mistakes that people are making when it comes to procurements?
Well, it was interesting. I was at an event last year and I got engaged with a conversation with a lady who was head of shared service. And she was saying that, shared, like the actual global supply chain or procurement teams, often they'll be tasked to do, but they don't really understand what it is that is the necessary requirement. So, a lot of the time they'll go through a process and they'll sort of document to ask the questions. But again, it's that misinterpretation between why is that important for a particular part of the business and how do they translate that through. There's also, I mean, you can see it everywhere. There's announcements around workforce reductions here, there, and everywhere. And some organizations are looking even at, their procurement teams and sort of leaning down their procurement teams. I have seen a lot more responsibility be shifted over to global payroll leaders rather than actually have a global procurement or indirect supply chain team that we would have maybe seen 10, 15 years ago. And that would have been the main point of contact until you got to a certain stage of that relationship of we are going to go into a 10-year partnership together, a 5-year partnership. We're going to spend a lot of money with each other in terms of how we're going to help you to grow. That then at that point, you would maybe get access to someone at the C-suite if you were on the vendor side. I'm seeing some real market shifts there, Tim, on more people taking ownership of that supply chain relationship with suppliers, and not all global payroll leaders are equipped to do that. It's a bit of a skill set actually negotiating SLAs and contractual points, and that isn't something when you've been operating your global payroll team, you're making sure everyone's getting paid and you're servicing different countries and compliance is changing, there's new legislation coming in and you're trying to keep on top of that. To then start to add those additional skill sets on top, it can be quite challenging for global payroll leadership teams these days. So again, I would say I think that the most common challenge is really that misinterpretation on where that's going. And also when I have seen engagements happen and it's been led by the global supply chain teams, it's amazing how the market now are starting to say, well, if this is just a price tire kicking exercise, then we're not engaging in that process. And I think that's been a combination. There was a client I was working with last year, and they went to global payroll evaluation about probably about 2 years ago. And they selected a vendor, but they decided to kind of change their path. So they actually, instead of signing for everything, they signed with one vendor for a small amount of countries. But they didn't go back to the 15 other vendors that they went to and explained why they selected that particular vendor. And a lot of service providers that are out there, they've had that happen to them far too often, where people don't communicate why they weren't selected or what was the stage where it kind of fell apart. And so actually, when we're going through our evaluations and we're supporting clients go through that, we document every stage of the process. We have questionnaires through every stage of the process. So there is no bias as we're going through each of the stage gates. And more importantly, our clients will explain exactly where points of transition started. You sort of took over at this stage, and you took over because we didn't feel as confident in this. And a lot of the time, it's down to confidence.
Yeah.
Now, not everyone's sharing all of that all the way through that, but there's massive learning opportunity for the vendors that even if they haven't won that business, there's a huge learning opportunity, which is where we're hoping that our support and helping with the navigation, one, it helps empower the client to share real transparent feedback about why they didn't go through that process, but also helps the partner to really understand, actually, if that's happening for one organization, that may be something that's actually felt in other pursuits that they're going through. So we're really trying to find a pathway of helping everyone that's going through the process to maximize the opportunity to learn something through it, and to really be transparent with each other as they're going through it.
And I think that's really important, isn't it? Because, as you say, if the assumption always from salespeople is that people have a bias, and the fact is that you're not going to pick me because of X, Y, Z, and it's so important that you're actually transparent to say, actually, you weren't chosen because of the fact of you said something earlier on about some payroll functionality or something. Because you don't have that, and maybe you need to focus on that in terms of your development path. Question.
Yeah, and one of the things that we're really clear on is that where those points of concern arise, let's go back and just validate the question again, because then it gives everyone an opportunity to go back and actually say, this is how we would address it, this is how we do it. And more importantly, let's get it in the SOW. Like if it's something that you're querying or questioning, is it definitely going to happen? Then let's get it written down. And providers that are confident in their service capability, they've got no problem writing it into the SOW if it gives you extra protection. It's just about understanding and clarity. That's where we're coming from this, on helping both sides to really navigate that. And so it then becomes a really fair evaluation and a well documented and supported from that contractual and commercial arrangement. That's, again, you're kind of preparing for a divorce, but you're looking for this to be a long-term marriage, is how I've always talked about any kind of service provider. 'Cause most organizations, they don't look to change their payroll on an active every couple of years. They're typically will stick with payroll between 8 to 12 years. And because again, nobody wants the upheaval and the risk of not paying the organization correctly. It's just far too great a risk to businesses, and CEOs don't want that on there. They don't want that blasted over the news.
No. Wendy, thank you so much for coming on and talking about how you can reduce buy cycles for your clients. Remind people where they can get hold of you.
They can either reach out, Tim, through LinkedIn, just Wendy Muirhead at LinkedIn, or Wendy at wh-people.com.
Excellent. Wendy, thank you so much for coming on, and great to see you.
So good to see you too. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.